Nothing breaks all at once. That is the illusion created by history books. In reality, civilizations unravel slowly, quietly, and often invisibly to those living inside them. The streets are still walked, the markets still open, children still play, priests still chant the old words. But something subtle changes in the background, unspoken awareness that the future no longer feels solid. People stop planning far ahead. Repairs are postponed. Grand projects are delayed with the promise that conditions will improve next year. Hope does not vanish suddenly. It thins like air at high altitude until breathing becomes difficult without anyone realizing why. In the city we are about to explore, the signs appeared gradually. At first, they were easy to ignore. A shipment of goods arrived late. A harvest produced slightly less than expected. A ritual failed to bring the reassurance it once did. None of this was alarming on its own. Every society experiences fluctuations. Every generation believes it is simply enduring a difficult phase. What made this city different was not the presence of problems, but the growing realization that solutions were no longer restoring balance. They were only delaying discomfort. Daily life continued, but with a new undertone. Farmers noticed that the land demanded more effort for the same yield. Traders sensed that distant partners were becoming unreliable, not because of hostility, but because their own regions were struggling. Craftsmen still produced tools and ornaments, yet demand subtly shifted away from permanence and toward portability. Objects became smaller, lighter, easier to carry. No decree announced this change. It emerged naturally, as if the entire population were unconsciously preparing for movement. Children growing up during this period sensed the tension without understanding it. They heard fragments of adult conversations. They noticed the way elders spoke of the past with unusual intensity, as if rehearsing memories rather than living toward a future. Stories became nostalgic. Songs lingered on themes of origin and journey. Even games changed, favoring travel and escape over settlement and construction. These were not decisions, they were symptoms. Religious life intensified rather than weakened. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of societal decline. When uncertainty grows, belief does not disappear, it tightens. Ceremonies became more frequent. Offerings grew more elaborate. Temples were maintained even as homes began to show neglect. People did not lose faith, they leaned into it, searching for reassurance that endurance would be rewarded. When answers did not come, silence was interpreted as a test rather than a warning. Authority figures sensed the shift before anyone else. Administrators struggled to enforce policies that once functioned effortlessly. Compliance did not collapse, it softened. People followed rules, but without conviction. Taxes were paid, but reluctantly. Orders were obeyed, but slowly. Leadership responded by invoking tradition, precedent, and sacred duty. These appeals worked until they didn't. Power became symbolic before it became irrelevant. What is crucial to understand is that no single event triggered abandonment. There was no moment when someone stood and declared the city finished. Instead, a shared understanding emerged, spread through glances, pauses, and unfinished sentences. People began asking quieter questions. Not how do we fix this, but how long can we endure this? The difference between those two questions is the difference between survival and departure. Families began making private calculations. What knowledge was essential? What tools were worth carrying? What could be replaced elsewhere, and what could not? These discussions happened at night, away from public spaces, often without full agreement. Some wanted to stay, others wanted to leave. Over time, the arguments grew shorter. Resistance softened into resignation, not because hope died, but because the cost of hope grew too high. Eventually, the city reached a moment that historians struggle to pinpoint because it left no physical marker. A season passed, or a year, or several. And then, movement began, and not as a mass exodus, but as a sequence of departures. A family left, then another, then a neighborhood grew quieter. Services adjusted, markets shrank. What remained still functioned, but felt hollow. Those who stayed longer did not do so out of confidence, but out of attachment. When the final departure occurred, it was not dramatic. Doors were closed, Sacred objects were buried or placed carefully in hidden chambers. Fires were extinguished. Paths were cleared, not blocked. This was not a flight from danger. It was a farewell to a place that could no longer support the life it once promised. Centuries later, when outsiders arrived, they could not understand what they saw. A city that looked intact. Infrastructure still usable. No signs of struggle. It felt unnatural, as if the people had vanished mid-sin, and scholars would argue for generations, proposing droughts, invasions, disease, and disasters. Some of these explanations fit parts of the evidence. None of them fit all of it, because the truth is harder to accept. This civilization did not collapse because it failed. It ended because its people decided that the future existed elsewhere. And this was only the first. The first civilization we must examine existed in a landscape that seemed almost deliberately designed to sustain permanence. Wide river plains provided fertile soil. Seasonal floods, once feared, had been mastered and transformed into predictable cycles of renewal. The city itself was carefully positioned, neither too exposed nor too isolated, connected by roads and waterways that tied it to distant regions. This was not an accidental settlement. It was the product of long-term planning, generational knowledge, and confidence in continuity. At its height, the city functioned like a living organism. Administrative districts regulated labor and storage. Religious precincts structured time through festivals and ritual calendars. Residential areas were arranged not randomly, but according to profession, lineage, and responsibility. People understood where they belonged, what was expected of them, and how their lives fit into something larger. Stability was not just experienced, it was assumed. Trade routes extended far beyond the horizon. Goods arrived that locals could not produce themselves. Rare minerals, specialized tools, symbolic objects whose value was cultural rather than practical. In return, the city exported surplus food, craftsmanship, and influence. These exchanges were not merely economic. They were informational. News traveled with merchants. Ideas moved with materials. The city knew the world beyond its walls. And for a long time, the world responded. Daily life reflected this confidence. Homes were built with durability in mind. Public spaces were maintained not just for function, but for pride. Children were educated in both practical skills and shared narratives, taught not only how to live, but why their society mattered. Elders spoke of the past as a foundation, not a warning. There was struggle, of course, but it was struggle with context, framed as effort toward a stable future. What makes this civilization particularly important is that it possessed adaptive capacity. When floods grew stronger, canals were expanded. When populations increased, food systems were reorganized. When leadership changed, rituals legitimized the transition. This was not a fragile society waiting to break. It had already survived crises that would have destroyed lesser systems, yet this strength became part of its vulnerability. Over time, the systems that ensured stability grew complex. Maintenance required coordination across many layers of authority. Knowledge became specialized. A farmer no longer understood the full water system. A priest no longer grasped the logistics of food distribution. An administrator relied on reports rather than observation. The society still functioned, but fewer individuals understood it as a whole. Small inefficiencies began to accumulate. A canal cleared slightly later than optimal. A storage facility repaired temporarily instead of rebuilt. A festival extended to reassure the population rather than to mark a genuine turning point. None of these changes caused immediate harm. That was precisely the problem. The consequences were delayed, diffuse, and easy to rationalize. Environmental pressure increased subtly, not enough to cause famine, but enough to reduce margins. Harvests became less forgiving of error. Trade disruptions took longer to recover from. What had once been resilience began to resemble exhaustion. The city could still respond to problems, but each response consumed more energy than before. Social trust shifted quietly. People did not stop believing in institutions. They stopped believing those institutions could adapt quickly enough. This distinction matters. Faith persisted, but confidence eroded. When confidence disappears, compliance follows slowly behind. Rules are followed because they exist, not because they feel effective. This creates a strange psychological state where order remains visible, but belief in the future weakens. Leadership sensed this unease. Attempts were made to reinforce unity through symbolism. Monuments were restored. Public ceremonies emphasized continuity. Language invoking destiny and divine favor became more frequent. These efforts were sincere, not manipulative. Leaders themselves feared fragmentation and sought to prevent it using the only tools they knew. But symbolism cannot substitute for material security indefinitely. At the household level, behavior adapted first. Families diversified their skills. Portable tools replaced heavy investments. Oral knowledge became more valued than fixed infrastructure. Parents began teaching children how to travel safely, how to identify suitable land elsewhere, how to recognize friendly versus hostile territories. These lessons were framed as preparation, not abandonment. No one said they were leaving. They said they were being cautious. As years passed, caution became habit. Habit became expectation. And expectation became quiet consensus. The most revealing change occurred in how people spoke about the city itself. It was no longer described as eternal. It was described as ancestral, a place of origin rather than destination. This linguistic shift is subtle, but it marks a profound transformation. Societies that expect to remain speak in terms of future expansion. Societies preparing to leave speak in terms of preservation. Eventually, the question was no longer whether the city would endure, but whether remaining loyal to it was worth the cost. Loyalty, once automatic, became a burden. And when loyalty feels heavy, departure begins to feel reasonable. The first families to leave did not announce their departure. They framed it as temporary relocation, seasonal movement, exploration. When they did not return, explanations were offered. Opportunities elsewhere, better conditions, new alliances. Each absence normalized the idea that life beyond the city was possible and survivable. Those who stayed felt no immediate panic. The city still functioned. Systems adjusted. Empty homes were repurposed. Roles were consolidated. Decline was invisible because adaptation concealed it. This is how abandonment differs from collapse. Collapse overwhelms systems. Abandonment allows them to shrink gracefully until they cannot shrink anymore. The final phase unfolded slowly, then all at once. A tipping point was reached where maintaining the city required more effort than abandoning it. Not emotionally, but practically. Infrastructure demanded labor that no longer felt justified. Rituals lost participants. Authority lost audience. The city became a shell that required constant explanation to justify its existence. And so, one by one, people chose distance over belonging. The last to leave were not the weakest. They were the most attached. Priests, elders, caretakers of memory. They performed final acts, not of despair, but of respect. Objects were hidden, not destroyed. Spaces were closed, not defaced. This was not an ending meant to erase the past. It was an ending meant to preserve it. When silence finally settled, the city was still standing. It simply no longer had a reason to exist. The third civilization forces us to abandon the comfort of scarcity-based explanations. This society did not live on the edge of survival. It did not struggle for land, water, or food. Its territory was vast, its resources abundant, its population confident. From the outside, it appeared unstoppable. If any civilization should have endured, it was this one. Its cities spread across fertile regions connected by wide roads and rivers that allowed rapid movement of goods and people. Agriculture produced surplus reliably. Craft specialization reached remarkable levels. Art, philosophy, and governance flourished simultaneously. This was not a society merely surviving, it was one actively imagining its future. Expansion defined its identity. New settlements were founded regularly, not as desperate outposts, but as expressions of confidence. The civilization believed in growth as proof of vitality. Each generation expected to live better than the last. This expectation shaped everything from architecture to education. Buildings were designed to last. Institutions were built with longevity in mind. Memory was recorded meticulously. preserved in durable forms meant to outlast individuals. This civilization understood complexity and embraced it. Bureaucracy was extensive but effective. Laws were layered but flexible. Power was distributed across regions to prevent stagnation at the center. When problems arose, they were addressed through reform rather than reaction. For centuries, this system worked remarkably well. So when signs of withdrawal began to appear, they were almost impossible to recognize as such. The first changes were not material, but emotional. A subtle fatigue with scale emerged. People did not stop participating in society, but enthusiasm softened. Expansion slowed, not because of resistance, but because it no longer felt meaningful. The question shifted from, how much more can we build, to why are we building so much? This was not collapse thinking. It was existential. The civilization had reached a point where basic needs were met so reliably that survival was no longer the central concern. When survival fades into the background, deeper questions emerge. Purpose becomes harder to define. Achievement loses urgency. Stability creates space for doubt. Philosophical movements began questioning the assumption that growth equaled progress. Thinkers argued that accumulation did not guarantee fulfillment. Others warned that complexity itself carried hidden costs, that systems too large to feel personally meaningful could hollow out the sense of belonging. These ideas did not threaten the state. They were tolerated, even debated. This openness was a strength, but it also allowed dissatisfaction to circulate freely. People began to imagine alternative ways of living, not as rebellion, but as refinement. Smaller communities, slower rhythms, more direct relationships between effort and reward. At the same time, the administrative burden of maintaining vast infrastructure increased, not because resources ran out, but because attention did. Managing complexity requires constant engagement. Over time, the civilization's size made individual contribution feel insignificant. People fulfilled roles efficiently, but without emotional investment. This disengagement was subtle. Productivity remained high. Institutions functioned, but loyalty shifted from place to principle. People identified less with cities and more with ideas, professions, or philosophies that could exist anywhere. Migration followed belief. Rather than mass departure, the process unfolded as diffusion. Citizens moved to peripheral regions, not because the center failed, but because it no longer felt necessary. Remote areas offered autonomy without deprivation. The civilization's success had made decentralization possible. Ironically, abundance enabled departure. As populations thinned in core cities, systems adjusted smoothly at first. Services consolidated. Infrastructure scaled down. Nothing broke. This adaptability masked the underlying transformation. Observers saw efficiency, not retreat. Leadership responded by investing in symbolic renewal. Cultural projects celebrated heritage. Public works emphasized continuity. But these efforts assumed people still desired permanence. Many no longer did. The idea of legacy changed. Instead of building monuments meant to last centuries, individuals invested in knowledge, relationships, and portable identity. What mattered was not what stood behind them, but what moved forward with them. Eventually, some cities became administrative shells, still impressive, still functional, but emotionally empty. Rituals were performed by fewer participants. Public spaces echoed. The civilization had not lost capacity. It had lost attachment. When abandonment finally became undeniable, it was framed not as failure, but as evolution. The civilization did not disappear. It dissolved into networks of smaller societies that carried its values without its structure. Its language persisted. Its ideas influenced distant cultures. Its people survived, but its cities did not. Archaeologists encountering these sites later were confused. There were no signs of desperation. No abrupt end, just gradual thinning, followed by silence. The ruins felt unfinished, as if the builders had simply lost interest. Compared to the earlier civilizations, this case is the most unsettling. There was no obvious pressure, no clear enemy, no ecological limit. The civilization did not leave because it had to. It left because it could. This introduces a disturbing possibility that abandonment is not always a response to crisis. Sometimes, it is the outcome of success taken to its logical extreme. When a society becomes so capable that location no longer defines identity, place itself becomes optional. We are now three civilizations in different environments, different strengths, different pressures, same outcome, and yet one final case remains the most troubling of all, because this civilization showed signs of recognizing the pattern itself and still could not stop it. The fourth civilization is the most difficult to examine precisely because it understood history. Unlike the others, it possessed written records, long institutional memory, and a clear awareness that societies before it had risen, fractured, and disappeared. Its scholars studied past failures. Its leaders spoke openly about sustainability, cohesion, and long-term planning. This was a civilization that believed knowledge itself could prevent decline. Its cities were strategically distributed rather than centralized. Power was deliberately fragmented to avoid overdependence on any single hub. Infrastructure was redundant. Food systems were diversified. Education emphasized civic responsibility and historical awareness. This society did not merely inherit lessons from the past. It institutionalized them. For a long time, this worked. The civilization achieved a rare balance between scale and flexibility. When one region struggled, others compensated. When institutions faltered, reforms followed. There was no single point of failure. The system was designed to bend without breaking. Yet this design carried an unintended consequence. By eliminating dramatic crises, it removed clear signals. Problems emerged gradually and were absorbed quietly. There were no sharp shocks to provoke collective urgency. Adaptation became routine, almost invisible. The society learned how to cope with stress so well that it stopped recognizing when stress was accumulating. People lived comfortably. Innovation continued. Cultural production thrived. On the surface, there was no reason to fear abandonment. The first warning signs appeared not in infrastructure or economy, but in narrative. Stories about the future grew cautious, not pessimistic, but restrained. Expectations softened. Instead of imagining bold transformation, people spoke of managing complexity, avoiding catastrophe, maintaining balance. Survival replaced aspiration as the highest goal. This shift altered how individuals related to society. When the future is framed primarily as something to be protected rather than created, emotional investment changes. People comply, they cooperate, but they stop dreaming collectively. Over time, civic participation became procedural rather than passionate. Institutions still functioned, but engagement felt obligatory. Decision-making prioritized risk avoidance over opportunity. The civilization became exceptionally good at preventing collapse and exceptionally bad at inspiring attachment. At the personal level, people began seeking meaning outside shared structures. Identity fragmented into professions, communities of interest, belief systems, and networks that transcended geography. Technology and communication enabled this dispersion. One could belong deeply without being physically present. Place lost emotional gravity. Migration followed quietly, not as flight, but as preference. People moved for lifestyle, fulfillment, or alignment rather than necessity. The civilization's strength made this possible. Safety nets traveled with individuals. Knowledge was portable. Social systems adapted to absence without protest. As population density declined in traditional centers, institutions adjusted again. Services centralized. Physical spaces were consolidated. The civilization interpreted this as efficiency, not warning. Metrics improved even as presence diminished. Those who noticed the pattern struggled to articulate it. There was no crisis to point to, no injustice to rally against, no enemy to confront. The danger was abstract, diffuse, and slow. It did not inspire fear. It inspired resignation. Eventually, some cities became places of transit rather than belonging. People passed through, worked temporarily, then moved on. Maintenance continued, but care diminished. When structures decayed, they were stabilized, not restored. The civilization preserved function while losing intimacy. The final phase did not involve mass departure. It involved dispersal. The society thinned until its original form no longer existed. What remained was influence without center, culture without place, continuity without location. When historians later attempted to define the moment of abandonment, they could not. There was no date, no decree, no exodus. The civilization did not end, it faded. This is the most unsettling outcome of all. Not collapse, not departure, but diffusion so complete that the idea of a single civilization ceased to make sense. When we place all four cases side by side, a pattern becomes unavoidable. Abandonment does not require disaster. It does not require invasion. It does not require environmental collapse. It requires something far quieter. It requires the erosion of attachment. In every case, people stopped believing that their future was inseparable from a specific place. Once that belief weakened, everything else followed naturally. Infrastructure became optional. Ritual became symbolic. Authority became procedural. Staying became a choice rather than an assumption. Civilizations do not fall when they lose power. They fall when they lose reasons. This brings us to the most uncomfortable realization of the entire series. These societies did not fail to adapt. They adapted so successfully that permanence became unnecessary. Mobility replaced stability. Flexibility replaced rootedness. Survival no longer depended on staying. And once staying is no longer required, leaving becomes inevitable. What we call lost civilizations were not always lost to history. Many were lost to geography. Their people continued elsewhere, carrying fragments of identity forward, while their cities stood empty, waiting for future observers to mistake silence for catastrophe. The ruins we study are not warnings about collapse alone. They are warnings about disconnection. About the moment when a society can continue without its placehand chooses to do so. This is not ancient history. This is a pattern, and in the final parts of this series, we will confront what that pattern means for the modern world, where mobility is easier than ever. Identity is increasingly portable, and attachment to place is weakening across cultures. The question is no longer why civilizations leave. The question is whether permanence itself is an outdated idea. To understand abandonment fully, we must stop thinking of civilizations as physical entities and begin treating them as agreements. Every society is, at its core, a shared belief that remaining together in a specific place provides meaning, security, and future possibility. Buildings, laws, and borders are expressions of that belief, not its source. When the belief weakens, the structures persist only temporarily, like a body after the heartbeat has stopped. In each civilization examined so far, the decisive moment was psychological rather than material. The environment mattered, but only insofar as it altered perception. Political change mattered, but only when it disrupted legitimacy. Technology mattered, but only when it made alternatives imaginable. Abandonment began the moment people could envision a future that did not require staying. This is the threshold every society eventually approaches, the point at which continuity becomes optional. For early civilizations, this threshold was rare. Movement was dangerous. Knowledge was localized. Survival depended on proximity. Leaving meant exposure to the unknown. Staying, even under strain, was safer than dispersing. Attachment was reinforced by necessity. As systems grew more sophisticated, that necessity weakened. Trade routes extended reach. Writing preserved knowledge beyond memory. Tools improved adaptability. Mobility became less lethal. With each advancement, the cost of leaving declined. By the time civilizations developed surplus, specialization, and long-distance networks, abandonment no longer required desperation. It could occur gradually, rationally, even peacefully. This is why later societies often leave behind better ruins than earlier ones. Their infrastructure was stronger, their planning more advanced, their cities more carefully constructed. Yet those same qualities made departure less catastrophic. The system could function while thinning. It could survive absence. This creates a paradox rarely acknowledged in historical narratives. The more resilient a civilization becomes, the less anchored it is. Resilience reduces dependency. Dependency creates attachment. When individuals no longer depend on a specific place for survival, the emotional contract between people and land weakens. Belonging becomes conditional. Loyalty becomes negotiable. Roots become temporary. In this context, abandonment is not failure. It is optimization. People leave not because the system collapses, but because their personal cost-benefit calculation shifts. Opportunity outweighs continuity. Choice replaces obligation. This explains why many abandoned sites show no signs of violence or chaos. No mass graves, no burned layers, no abrupt destruction. Instead, we find order left behind, tools neatly placed, structures intact, symbols undisturbed. These are not the remains of panic. They are the remains of decision. The narrative of catastrophe is comforting because it externalizes blame. It suggests civilizations are victims of forces beyond control. But abandonment, driven by choice, is more unsettling. It implies agency. It implies preference. It suggests that people evaluated their society and concluded that staying was no longer the best option. This brings us to the central, often avoided question. What makes a civilization worth staying for? Not survival alone. Survival can be achieved elsewhere, not safety alone. Safety can be replicated, not prosperity alone. Prosperity is mobile. What anchors people is meaning, the sense that their presence matters, that their identity is inseparable from the place they inhabit, that leaving would fracture something essential. Once that sense erodes, even the strongest systems hollow out. This erosion rarely announces itself. It manifests subtly. Rituals feel performative. Civic pride becomes nostalgic. History is celebrated more than future potential. People speak of preservation rather than creation. When a society shifts from asking, "What will we build next?" to "How do we keep this from falling apart?" it has already entered the abandonment trajectory. The most dangerous phase is not decline, but maintenance without inspiration. This phase can last centuries. Outsiders often misinterpret it as stability. Metrics appear healthy. Institutions persist. The society functions. But internally, the emotional engine is idling. You can see this in language. Words like innovation, disruption, resilience, and sustainability dominate discourse. These are defensive terms. They focus on adaptation rather than vision. They imply a future that must be managed, not imagined. In abandoned civilizations, the final generations often saw themselves as caretakers rather than founders. Their role was to preserve inheritance, not extend it. This mindset produces competence, but not attachment. Eventually, someone asks a simple question: why here? And if the answer is tradition alone, departure becomes only a matter of time. Importantly, abandonment does not require consensus. It only requires enough people to leave that collective gravity weakens. Once that happens, the remaining population must carry more institutional weight with fewer participants. The burden increases. Incentives shift further. The cycle accelerates. This is why abandonment often feels sudden in retrospect, even when it was gradual in reality. The tipping point is invisible until crossed. From that moment, staying becomes the anomaly. In the ruins we study, we often project mystery because we expect drama. We search for floods, invasions, plagues. But the truth is more disquieting. Many civilizations ended not with screams, but with silence. People packed carefully. They took what mattered. They locked doors that would never be opened again. They assumed someone else would remain. No one did. Understanding this pattern forces us to confront a reality about civilization itself. Civilization is not a permanent state. It is a temporary alignment of incentives, meanings, and attachments. When those drift apart, no amount of infrastructure can hold it together. Stone does not create belonging. Belonging creates stone. And when belonging dissolves, stone remains waiting for archaeologists to ask the wrong questions. The final parts of this series will not look backward. They will look outward. We will examine how modern societies mirror these patterns, how technology accelerates detachment, and why future civilizations may be less likely to collapse and more likely to simply disperse. The ruins of the future may not be buried. They may be empty. The modern world represents a historical anomaly. For the first time, a global civilization exists where physical location is no longer the primary determinant of identity, livelihood, or belonging. Work travels digitally, culture spreads instantly, communities form without geography. The ancient equation place equals survival has been fundamentally broken. This changes everything. In earlier civilizations, leaving meant losing access to food systems, protection, and shared knowledge. Today, leaving often means gaining opportunity. Mobility is no longer an emergency response. It is a strategy. The modern individual is trained implicitly and explicitly to remain flexible, adaptable, and unrooted. This is not accidental. Education systems emphasize transferable skills. Economies reward movement. Technology reduces friction. Even language reflects this. Shift people speak of platforms, networks, and ecosystems rather than homelands or hearths. Civilization has become modular. At first, this appears to be progress. Modularity increases resilience. When one region suffers, others compensate. When one institution fails, alternatives exist. This mirrors the fourth civilization's design, scaled globally. But the same paradox applies. The more optional place becomes, the weaker attachment grows. Modern cities are growing faster than ever, yet fewer people describe them as permanent homes. Residency is provisional. Neighborhoods change rapidly. Cultural memory resets every generation. The city exists as a service provider, not a shared story. This is why modern abandonment does not resemble ancient ruins. Skyscrapers do not crumble immediately. Infrastructure remains operational. The abandonment is emotional long before it is physical. People stop investing psychologically. They delay long-term commitments. They treat communities as temporary. They disengage from civic life, not out of rebellion, but indifference. Governance becomes background noise. Participation declines not because systems are oppressive, but because they feel irrelevant. This is the early stage of abandonment. It is subtle, measurable only in trends. Declining local engagement, transient populations, shrinking birth rates in urban centers, increasing emphasis on personal fulfillment over collective continuity. None of these are catastrophic alone. Together, they signal drift. Technology accelerates this drift by offering substitutes for place-based meaning. Online communities provide identity. Virtual spaces host rituals. Digital archives replace physical memory. One can feel deeply connected without being physically present. This creates a civilization that exists everywhere and nowhere. The danger is not collapse, but evaporation. When a society evaporates, it leaves behind infrastructure without narrative, laws without loyalty, cities without citizens in the emotional sense. Maintenance continues, but stewardship disappears. Future historians may struggle to identify when this happened. There will be no singular crisis, no fall of a capital, no decisive event, just thinning. The most unsettling implication is this. Modern civilization may be the most stable system ever created, the least permanent. Stability delays collapse, but does not prevent abandonment. In fact, it may hasten it by making departure painless. If ancient civilizations fell because they could not adapt, modern civilization may disperse because it adapted too well. This reframes progress itself as a double-edged force. Every innovation that reduces dependence on place weakens the glue that holds societies together. Every convenience makes leaving easier. Every backup system reduces urgency. We are building systems designed to survive without us. And when systems no longer need people to remain physically invested, people stop remaining. This is not a prediction of doom. It is a shift in form. Future civilizations may not leave behind ruins like Nan Madol or Angkor. They may leave behind fully functioning cities with dwindling presence, automated maintenance, and historical plaques explaining why no one lives there anymore. Abandonment without decay. The question then becomes existential rather than historical. If civilization no longer requires permanence, what replaces it? Is continuity even desirable? Or is humanity transitioning into a phase where movement, not settlement, defines success? Ancient ruins teach us that permanence was once the goal. Modern systems suggest permanence may be optional. This tension defines our era, and in the final parts of this series, we will confront the most difficult idea of all, that humanity may not be heading toward collapse or utopia, but toward a civilization that no longer leaves traces in the way history expects. A civilization that exists in flow. A civilization that one day may vanish without ruins. If civilization is becoming fluid rather than fixed, then our traditional understanding of history begins to break down. History has always relied on anchors: cities, monuments, borders, ruins. These are the markers that allow future generations to reconstruct meaning. But a civilization that prioritizes movement over settlement leaves fewer anchors behind. Its memory becomes fragmented, scattered across servers, archives, and personal devices rather than carved into stone. This creates a dangerous illusion. A society may believe it is immortal because its data persists, its influence spreads, and its systems replicate globally. But influence is not continuity. Data is not memory. Replication is not identity. Ancient civilizations believed permanence was achieved through stone. Modern civilization believes permanence is achieved through redundancy. Yet redundancy does not preserve meaning. It preserves function. Meaning requires context, shared experience, and place-based continuity. When those erode, civilization enters a state historians have no proper word for: a condition where everything works, but nothing belongs. This is why modern abandonment will not look like failure. It will look like optimization. Cities will be streamlined. Communities will be efficient. Institutions will merge, digitize, decentralize. From within the system, these changes will feel rational and progressive. From outside, from the perspective of deep time, they will resemble withdrawal. The emotional contract that once bound individuals to land, to neighbors, to shared destiny will weaken further. Loyalty will shift toward values, causes, or identities that are abstract and portable. People will belong everywhere partially, nowhere fully. At that point, abandonment becomes structural. Not because people want to leave, but because staying no longer means the same thing it once did. In earlier civilizations, staying meant continuity of lineage, memory, and obligation. In the modern world, staying often means delaying opportunity. Permanence competes with possibility. Roots compete with options. History shows us how this ends, not abruptly, but quietly. The generation that leaves does not see itself as ending anything. It sees itself as upgrading, adapting, improving. The generation that remains inherits systems too large for its numbers, traditions too heavy for its relevance, and narratives that no longer motivate sacrifice. Eventually, no one remembers why the place mattered. This is the moment civilizations truly end, not when people leave, but when no one feels lost. Future archaeologists may find pristine structures, powered systems, even automated maintenance, long after human presence has faded. They will debate why these places were abandoned, unable to locate war, famine, or disaster. The answer will be unsettlingly simple. There was no reason to stay. And this brings us to the most uncomfortable truth uncovered by this entire exploration. Civilizations do not die when they are destroyed. They die when they become unnecessary. All four civilizations examined across this series reached that point through different paths: environmental strain, political erosion, spiritual exhaustion, and finally, over-adaptation. Yet the outcome was the same. Once survival, identity, and meaning could be achieved elsewhere, the place itself became optional. Humanity has always moved toward what offers the greatest return on effort. For thousands of years, that meant settling, building, and defending. Now, increasingly, it means mobility, flexibility, and detachment. This is not regression, it is evolution. But evolution does not preserve what it no longer needs. The question is no longer whether future civilizations will be abandoned. The question is whether future civilizations will ever truly be founded in the first place. If settlement becomes temporary by default, if identity is untethered from land, if belonging exists primarily in motion, then the very concept of a lost civilization may disappear. There will be nothing to lose. Only systems that once operated. only places that once mattered, and silence where meaning used to live. The story of civilizations that chose to leave is not merely about the past. It is a lens for understanding the present and anticipating the future. From the first abandoned city where people quietly walked away, to the high plateaus of the second civilization, to the abundant empire of the third, and finally, the globally aware society of the fourth, a clear pattern emerges. Permanence is never guaranteed, and it is often abandoned voluntarily. The lesson is simple, yet profound. The structures of society are only as resilient as the attachments of the people within them. When attachment fades, all the walls, roads, and monuments cannot compel presence. Civilization is a social contract, and contracts require belief. When belief dissipates, even the most sophisticated systems collapse, not in fire or blood, but in silence. Modern humanity is at a crossroads analogous to these ancient societies. For the first time in history, we possess the technological capability to detach ourselves from place entirely. Cities can function autonomously. Knowledge can travel instantly. Culture is accessible globally, yet it requires no local investment. We have created societies that can, in theory, persist without the continuous physical presence of their citizens. But this is a double-edged reality. While resilience is unparalleled, attachment is optional. And without attachment, stability itself becomes a fragile illusion. Our patterns of work, travel, and social connection already mirror the tendencies of past civilizations that chose to leave. People migrate for opportunity. Virtual communities substitute for local cohesion. And digital memory often replaces the tactile experience of shared space. The ancient pattern teaches us that the moment staying becomes optional is the moment departure begins. Ancient abandoned cities teach us that abandonment is rational, deliberate, and often peaceful. People did not panic. They did not destroy. They calculated, prepared, and left, leaving behind a world that functioned, waiting for observers to misinterpret emptiness as catastrophe. In the modern context, the scale is unprecedented. Departures are not limited to a city or region. Entire populations can disperse globally, digitally, and conceptually. The tools of mobility and adaptation have evolved, making the human relationship with permanence fundamentally different from anything before. Yet, the cautionary insight remains. When belonging erodes, the meaning of place dissolves. The consequence is not instant ruin, but long-term invisibility. Buildings continue to function, roads remain open, systems operate. But the human heartbeat that once gave those spaces vitality fades. Civilization continues without citizens in the emotional sense, leaving traces that are measurable but hollow. Archaeologists of the future may encounter perfectly maintained infrastructure devoid of human attachment, and they will puzzle over the apparent contradiction. This is the ultimate paradox. Survival can persist while significance vanishes. The ruin is invisible, yet the departure is complete. The narrative also challenges our conception of progress. We often equate advancement with permanence, assuming that more complex societies will endure longer. The historical evidence contradicts this assumption. Civilizations can adapt perfectly, thrive, and still abandon their foundations voluntarily. Success, in some cases, accelerates departure by making staying optional. The more capable a society becomes of sustaining life elsewhere, the less tied it is to its existing place. Modern humanity is moving toward a similar tipping point. Every convenience, every technological improvement, every social innovation that reduces dependence on local infrastructure also diminishes attachment. We may be building systems that outlive the people who inhabit them emotionally. The key insight is that abandonment is not equivalent to failure. It is, instead, an evolutionary choice. In the context of the civilizations studied, leaving was rational, deliberate, and often protective. It was a conscious decision to prioritize survival, identity, and continuity over attachment to a specific location. Ancient societies demonstrate that departure does not equate to catastrophe, nor does it negate achievement. It reframes success, showing that civilization is not only measured by permanence, but also by the ability to carry knowledge, culture, and identity forward, wherever people choose to exist. This perspective invites reflection on our own era. Modern society may already be enacting the same patterns on a global scale. Mobility, flexibility, and digital identity reduce the necessity of permanent settlement. The cities, institutions, and cultural landmarks we cherish may continue to exist physically. Yet the human presence that gives them meaning could dissipate quietly over generations. Understanding this allows us to confront the reality of impermanence without panic. To recognize that civilization may evolve into forms that prioritize function and continuity over attachment and rootedness. Ultimately, the story of civilizations that chose to leave is a reminder of the profound role human perception and belief play in shaping history. Physical resources, technology, and governance matter only insofar as people invest meaning in them. When that meaning dissipates, the material world can no longer sustain the civilization it once embodied. Abandonment is the natural consequence of rational detachments, a phenomenon as old as civilization itself and as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. As we consider the ruins of the past and the cities of the present, the lesson is clear. Permanence is a choice, not a guarantee. Civilization exists in the minds, commitments, and attachments of its people. When attachment wanes, departure is inevitable, silent, and complete. This is the final pattern, the ultimate truth that emerges across all four civilizations. Survival depends not only on structures, systems, and resources, but on the intangible bonds that make a place worth staying for. Without those bonds, even the grandest civilization can continue to exist functionally, while quietly fading into history. The question that remains for the modern world is whether we will recognize this dynamic in time. Will we invest in meaning, attachment, and belonging alongside our technological and structural achievements? Or will we create societies that are impeccably capable, yet emotionally uninhabited, leaving behind functioning infrastructure as silent testimony to what once mattered? The choice, as it always has been, rests with the people. Civilization survives not merely through survival itself, but through the collective belief that staying is worth the cost. And until that belief disappears entirely, the cycle continues. Adaptation, evolution, and, sometimes, voluntary departure.